Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands, October 1942. The jungle breathed. That's what Sergeant Jack Holloway had learned in his first week on this godforsaken island. The jungle was alive, and it was trying to kill you. Not with tigers or snakes, though those existed. With something far worse. Silence broken by a single crack, followed by a Marine dropping dead before anyone could figure out where the shot came from. Jack pressed himself against the rotting trunk of a banyan tree, his Springfield rifle slick with humidity. Somewhere in the green hell ahead, a Japanese sniper waited, patient, invisible, deadly. "I don't see anything, Sarge." Private Miller's voice was tight with fear. The kid was 19, from Iowa, and had never seen combat before Guadalcanal. Now he'd seen 6 men from their platoon die in 3 days, each one picked off by ghost shooters who vanished like smoke. "You won't see them," Jack whispered back. "That's the whole damn point." The Japanese snipers were like nothing the Marines had faced in training. They tied themselves into treetops 40 feet up, covered themselves in foliage until they became part of the canopy. Some stayed in position for days, not moving, barely breathing, waiting for the perfect shot. Others dug spider holes and fired through tiny openings before disappearing underground. And they were winning. Jack's platoon had been tasked with clearing a half-mile of jungle trail to secure a supply route. Simple mission on paper, suicide mission in reality. They'd advanced maybe 200 yards in 3 days, losing 11 men. Not to banzai charges or artillery, to single, perfectly placed rifle shots that came from nowhere and everywhere. "We can't stay here," Lieutenant Morrison said, crawling up beside Jack. His uniform was black with sweat and mud. "Command wants this trail cleared by 1800 hours. That's 4 hours from now." "Command isn't getting shot at by invisible ghosts," Jack replied. "We move, we die. That's simple." "Then what do you suggest?" Jack had been thinking about this problem for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, his mind grinding through possibilities. Traditional counter-sniper tactics didn't work here. You couldn't spot muzzle flash in the dense canopy. You couldn't hear shot direction when sound bounced off 1,000 trees. You couldn't suppress an enemy you couldn't locate. "We need to make them shoot first," Jack said slowly, "but not at us." "What the hell does that mean?" Before Jack could answer, Private Chen, their scout, came sliding back through the undergrowth, his eyes wide. "Movement, 50 yards ahead. I saw something in the trees, just for a second." "What kind of movement?" "Don't know. Could be foliage shifting. Could be—" Chen didn't finish the sentence. "Could be a sniper adjusting position." Jack made a decision. "Miller, give me your helmet." "Sarge, your helmet, now." Miller handed it over, confused. Jack found a stick, jammed it through the helmet's chin strap, then slowly, very slowly, raised it above the fallen log they were using for cover. Nothing happened. He raised it higher, moving it slightly to simulate a Marine checking the terrain ahead. The crack of the rifle shot came from somewhere above and to the left. The helmet jerked backward, a neat hole punched through the front. Miller went pale. "See?" Jack lowered the helmet, examining the angle of the shot. "He's up in the canopy, about 40 feet up, positioned northwest of our location. Now we know where he is." "Knowing doesn't help if we can't shoot back," Morrison said. "That canopy is too thick. We could fire 100 rounds and never hit him." "We don't need to hit him." Jack's mind was racing now, pieces of a plan falling into place. "We need to make him think we can." He thought about the wreckage they'd passed 2 hours ago, a downed Japanese Zero, its fuselage torn apart, cockpit glass shattered across the jungle floor, broken glass, mirrors, reflections. "I need 3 men and 20 minutes, Jack said, "and everyone else needs to keep that sniper thinking we're pinned down here." "Holloway, what are you planning?" "Something stupid, sir, really, really stupid." 20 minutes later, Jack crouched at the base of a tree 80 yards from where the Japanese sniper had fired. In his pack, he carried 7 pieces of cockpit glass, each about the size of his palm, carefully wrapped in cloth. In his head, he carried a theory that would either save lives or get him killed. The theory was simple: snipers hunted by patience and concealment. They watched for movement, for targets, for opportunities. But what if you could create false opportunities? What if you could make them see something that wasn't there? Jack unwrapped the first piece of mirror glass. It was cracked, the edges sharp enough to draw blood. He wedged it into a forked branch about chest height, angling it to catch the dim jungle light. Then he moved 30 feet to the right and did it again, then again. By the time he was done, he'd created a network of 7 mirrors, each positioned to create reflections at different angles. Some caught light from above. Others created glints that looked like scope reflections. One was angled to throw a moving shadow that resembled a helmet shifting position. "Holloway, you gone crazy?" Chen whispered from his covering position. "What are those?" "Bait," Jack replied. "Now get ready to spot." He crawled back to a protected position, raised his rifle, and used a long stick to tap one of the nearby mirrors. It shifted, catching sunlight, throwing a brief flash across the canopy. 5 seconds passed, 10, 15. Then the crack of a rifle shot. The bullet hit a tree trunk 2 feet from one of the mirrors. "Northwest, 42 degrees elevation," Chen called out. "I saw the muzzle flash." Jack didn't have a clear shot. Too much foliage. But now he knew something crucial. The technique worked. The sniper had fired at a reflection, revealing his position, and more importantly, he was now wondering why his shot hadn't produced a body. Jack tapped another mirror, another flash, this time from a completely different location. The Japanese sniper fired again, this time at the second mirror's position. "He's confused," Chen whispered, something like excitement in his voice. "He thinks there are multiple Marines in positions he can't quite see." "Exactly," Jack said, "and every time he shoots, he tells us where he is." The third time Jack triggered a mirror flash, the sniper didn't fire. He was learning, adapting. But now Jack had triangulated his position based on the 2 previous shots. He was in a massive tree, probably on a platform, northwest sector, approximately 40 feet up. Jack signaled Morrison to bring up the Browning automatic rifle. "I'm going to make him move. When he does, light up that tree." "How are you going to make him move?" "With something really, really stupid." Jack took one of the larger mirror pieces and crawled to a new position, 50 yards from the sniper's estimated location. He propped the mirror against a rock, angled it upward, and used his rifle scope to aim the reflection. Then he adjusted the angle until the reflected sunlight was pointing directly at where he thought the sniper was hiding. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then Jack saw it. A tiny shift in the foliage, a dark shape moving slightly to avoid the light in his eyes. The sniper was repositioning. "Now!" Jack shouted. The bar opened up, 20 rounds of 30-06 ammunition shredding through the canopy. Leaves and branches exploded, and something heavy fell from the tree, a rifle first, then a body, crashing through foliage until it hit the jungle floor with a wet thump. The silence that followed was profound. The Marines stared at the fallen sniper, then at Jack, then at the scattered mirrors, catching light like tiny stars in the green darkness. "Holy hell," Morrison breathed. "It actually worked." "It shouldn't have," Jack admitted. But it did. They found the Japanese sniper 30 yards from their position. He'd been tied into a tree platform, had enough rations for a week, and had already killed 4 Marines, judging by the notches on his rifle stock. He was maybe 25 years old, and he'd died because he'd fired at reflections instead of men. That night, back at the battalion perimeter, Jack sat cleaning his rifle while word of the mirror trick spread through the unit. Some Marines thought it was brilliant, others thought it was luck. Lieutenant Morrison thought it was something else entirely. "I'm sending a report up the chain," he said, sitting down beside Jack. What you did today, that's not standard doctrine. Hell, it's not any kind of doctrine, but it worked. It worked once, Jack corrected. Doesn't mean it'll work again. Then make it work again, because we've got 20 miles of jungle to clear, and I'd rather do it with your stupid mirror tricks than with more body bags. Jack looked at the piece of cockpit glass he'd kept, turning it in his hands. Light moved across its surface, creating patterns, illusions, false signals. In a war where the enemy was invisible, maybe visibility itself was a weapon. "I'll need more mirrors," he said quietly, "and I'll need to teach others how to use them. Whatever you need, just keep our boys alive." But as Jack lay in his tent that night, staring at the canvas ceiling, he knew the truth. The Japanese would adapt. They'd learn. And next time, his mirror trick might not be enough. Next time, he might be the one falling from a tree, killed by his own cleverness turned against him. The jungle breathed around him, vast and hostile and full of patient, invisible death. And somewhere out there, other snipers were watching, learning, preparing their response to the American who hunted with broken glass and reflected light. Guadalcanal, October 1942, Day 6. Word spread through the Japanese lines like fire through dry bamboo. The Americans had a new weapon, not artillery or tanks, but something stranger, more unsettling. A Marine who hunted with mirrors, who created ghosts in the jungle, who made veteran snipers fire at nothing and die for their mistakes. Corporal Takeshi Yamamoto heard the whispers in the command bunker. He was 28, trained at the elite sniper school in Hokkaido, and had 47 confirmed kills across China and the Philippines. He didn't believe in ghosts or American tricks. He believed in patience, discipline, and the certainty that a well-placed bullet solved all tactical problems. "They say he uses mirrors to confuse our shooters," Lieutenant Saito explained, pointing to a crude map of the American advance. "3 of our best men have died in 4 days. They're moving faster now, clearing positions we thought were impregnable." "Mirrors can't kill," Yamamoto replied calmly. "Only bullets kill. This American is simply clever. Cleverness can be defeated." "Then defeat him." Yamamoto bowed and left to study the terrain. The Americans would come through the valley approach. There was no other route that made tactical sense. And when they did, he would be waiting. Not in a tree this time, not in a spider hole. Somewhere this mirror-wielding Marine wouldn't expect. 3 miles away, Jack Holloway was teaching his technique to 6 hand-picked Marines. They'd requisitioned every piece of reflective material they could find. Cockpit glass from wrecked planes, polished metal from damaged equipment, even the shaving mirrors from dead soldiers' personal effects. "The key is angles," Jack explained, positioning a mirror against a tree trunk. "You're not trying to blind them. You're trying to create what looks like scope glinter helmet reflection, something their training has conditioned them to shoot at instinctively." "What if they don't shoot?" Private Davies asked. He was 22, from Montana, and had worked as a hunting guide before the war. "What if they just watch? Then you use multiple mirrors to create the illusion of movement, make them think there's a squad where there's only glass. Force them to either shoot and reveal position or hold fire and let us advance." "It's a mind game," Chen added. He'd become Jack's unofficial assistant, setting up mirror networks with the precision of someone arranging chess pieces. "We're not fighting their marksmanship, we're fighting their training." They practiced for 2 hours, learning to read angles, to anticipate sightlines, to think like the enemy. Some Marines picked it up quickly. Others struggled with the abstract nature of using reflections as weapons. "How many mirrors should we carry?" Davies asked. "As many as you can without weighing yourself down. 6 minimum, 10 ideal, and always, always have one position behind you as insurance. That's your lifesaver mirror." "Lifesaver mirror?" Jack positioned a small piece of glass at ground level, angled backward. "If a sniper flanks you, this gives you rear visibility without exposing yourself. Saved my life twice already." By noon, they were ready to test the technique on a live mission. Battalion wanted a ridge cleared, high ground overlooking a strategic river crossing. Intelligence reported at least 3 Japanese snipers dug in on that ridge. Traditional assault would cost 12 lives minimum. "We do this quiet," Jack briefed his team. "No one fires unless we have a confirmed target. The mirrors do the talking. We just listen for the answer." They moved through the jungle in a spread formation, each man carrying his mirror kit in addition to standard gear. The extra weight was noticeable, but so was the confidence. They weren't going in blind anymore. They had a method, a system, a way to fight back against an enemy that had terrorized them for weeks. The ridge rose ahead, its slopes covered in dense vegetation. Perfect sniper country, overlapping fields of fire, countless hiding positions, natural cover everywhere. Jack signaled a halt at the base and began his setup. He placed mirrors methodically, creating a pattern that would make any observer think a full squad was preparing to assault the ridge. Some mirrors caught direct sunlight. Others were positioned in shadow, their surfaces just barely visible. 2 were angled to create movement illusions when wind shifted the branches they were attached to. "Positions set," Chen reported. 7 mirrors active, 3 in reserve. Now we wait. Waiting was the hardest part. Jack had learned that snipers often held fire for hours, letting targets move deeper into kill zones. Patience versus patience, discipline versus discipline. But Jack had an advantage. His mirrors didn't get tired, didn't get bored, didn't make mistakes. 15 minutes passed. A bird called somewhere in the canopy. Insects droned in the humid air. The mirrors caught light through reflections, created the illusion of movement and presence. Then crack! A rifle shot from the ridge, hitting a tree 2 feet from one of the forward mirrors. "Northwest position, 70 yards, elevated 15 degrees, Chen called softly. Jack didn't return fire. Instead, he used a long stick to tap a mirror on the opposite flank, creating a flash from a completely different location. 5 seconds later, crack! The sniper fired again, this time toward the new reflection. "He's hunting alone," Jack whispered. "No team support. That's a mistake." He activated a 3rd mirror, this one positioned to reflect light directly back toward the ridge, a technique he'd been developing. If the sniper was using a scope, the reflection might catch his lens, creating a brief glint. And there it was. A tiny flash of light from a dark patch of vegetation 75 yards up the ridge. "Target acquired," Jack breathed. "Davies, you see it?" "Got him. Want me to take the shot?" "Negative. We confirm first." Jack pulled out his binoculars, studying the area where he'd seen the flash. The foliage was too thick for a clear view, but he could see something, a shape that didn't quite match the natural terrain. He was about to give the fire order when Chen grabbed his arm. "Sarge, look 30 degrees right of that position." Jack shifted his binoculars and saw it, another scope glint, barely visible, from a completely different location. 2 snipers, Jack said, his stomach tightening. The first one was bait. They learned the trick. It was brilliant, actually. Use one sniper to draw fire, reveal American positions, while the second sniper, the real threat, waited for targets to expose themselves. The Japanese had adapted faster than Jack expected. "What do we do?" Davies asked, tension in his voice. Jack thought fast. If the Japanese were using a 2-man team with one as bait, they'd expect the Americans to fall for it. They'd be watching the area around the fake sniper, waiting for muzzle flashes from counterfire. "We don't take the bait," Jack decided. "We make them think we took it." He grabbed 3 mirrors and began a new configuration. This time, he positioned them to create what would look like multiple Marines, firing from spread positions, angles that would catch light in quick succession, simulating muzzle flash. "Chen, on my signal, you trigger mirrors 1, 3, and 5 in sequence, fast as you can. Make it look like a full squad opening up." "Got it." "Davies, Miller, you watch that second sniper position. The real one. He's going to move or shoot when he thinks he has targets. That's when we take him." Jack counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. Chen triggered the mirrors. Light flashed from 3 different positions in rapid succession, looking exactly like a squad firing. Jack even threw a handful of dirt to simulate the disturbance of discharging rifles. The bait sniper fired immediately, a disciplined double tap at the mirror positions, and then the second sniper made his mistake. He shifted his aim toward where the muzzle flashes had come from, his movement creating just enough disturbance in the foliage to reveal his actual position. "Now," Jack commanded. Davies and Miller fired together, their shots precise and coordinated. 70 yards away, something fell from a hidden platform. The bait sniper, now realizing his partner was down, tried to relocate, but panic made him clumsy. He moved too fast, exposed his silhouette for just a moment. Chen's rifle cracked. The bait sniper dropped. The silence that returned was absolute. No more hidden shooters, no more invisible death, just the jungle breathing around them, indifferent to the deadly game played in its shadows. "2 down, Morrison said, arriving with reinforcements, "and you didn't lose a single man." "How?" "They adapted to the mirror trick," Jack explained, gathering his equipment. "So we adapted to their adaptation. It's not about the mirrors anymore. It's about making them think we're doing one thing while we're actually doing another." "That's—" Morrison searched for words. "That's not infantry tactics. That's like theater." "War is theater," Jack replied quietly. "Especially when you're fighting people who'd rather die than surrender. You can't just kill them. You have to outthink them." But as they moved up to secure the ridge, Jack felt a cold certainty settling in his gut. The Japanese had adapted once. They'd adapt again. And somewhere out there, someone was already planning the counter to his counter, the response to his technique, the trap designed specifically for the American who hunted with mirrors. 3 days later, that certainty proved correct. Jack's team was clearing a river approach when Chen spotted something odd, a mirror Japanese-made positioned in a tree, angled perfectly to catch light, obviously placed. "It's bait," Chen said immediately. "They're using our own trick against us." Jack studied it through his binoculars. The mirror was positioned exactly how he would have placed it. Perfect angle, natural-looking placement designed to draw attention. Which meant somewhere nearby, a Japanese sniper was watching, waiting for Americans to investigate or try to counter the false position. "Smart," Jack admitted. "They're learning faster than I expected." "So what do we do?" Jack thought about Corporal Yamamoto, though he didn't know his name yet. Somewhere out there, a Japanese sniper was thinking the same thoughts Jack was thinking, playing the same mental chess game, adapting to adaptation to adaptation. 2 minds locked in a deadly spiral of counter-tactics, each trying to stay 1 move ahead. "We changed the game entirely," Jack said. "If they're using mirrors now, mirrors are no longer an advantage, so we find a new way to hunt." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. There was no new way, only variations of the same deadly dance. And in that dance, whoever blinked first died. The mirror in the tree caught sunlight, throwing false promises across the jungle. And in the shadows, invisible and patient, the hunters watched each other through glass and steel and the terrible mathematics of war. Guadalcanal, November 1942, day 19th. Corporal Takeshi Yamamoto had been hunting the Mirror Marine for 2 weeks. He'd studied every position where the American had operated, examined the fallen bodies of his comrades, analyzed the angles and patterns. The American was good, perhaps the best opponent Yamamoto had ever faced, but good wasn't enough. In the end, patience always defeated cleverness. Now Yamamoto lay in a position he'd prepared over 3 days, a shallow depression in the earth, covered with fallen logs and vegetation, with sight lines to 3 different approaches. No trees, no elevation. The American expected snipers above, so Yamamoto had gone below, and he'd learned the mirror trick himself, not to use it the same way, but to understand it, to predict it, to turn it into a trap. 100 yards away, Jack Holloway moved through the jungle with his six-man team. They were being too careful now, he realized. The mirror technique had worked so well that they'd started to rely on it exclusively. That was dangerous. Reliance bred predictability, and predictability was death. "Something feels wrong," Chen whispered. "We've been moving for 2 hours and haven't seen any resistance." "Maybe they pulled back," Davies suggested. "Or maybe they're waiting for us to do something predictable," Jack replied. He studied the terrain ahead, a natural clearing around a stream crossing, perfect ambush site, too perfect. He deployed his mirrors anyway, creating the standard pattern, but this time he added something new, a mirror positioned at ground level, angled low, designed to catch reflections of anything moving in the underbrush rather than in the trees. That low mirror saved his life. In its reflection, Jack saw it, a tiny shift in the earth itself, maybe 80 yards ahead. Not trees, not canopy, ground level. The sniper was below, not above. Jack's hand shot up, freezing his team. He pointed to the ground mirror, then at his eyes. Chen looked, saw the reflection, and his face went pale. "Ground position," Chen mouthed silently. "New tactic." Yamamoto saw the Americans stop, saw them looking at something. He couldn't see what, but their body language told him everything. They'd spotted something. His position? Impossible. He'd been motionless for 6 hours. Unless... the mirror. The low-positioned mirror, catching reflections at an angle Yamamoto hadn't anticipated. For the first time in his career, Yamamoto felt something close to respect for an enemy. This American didn't just use mirrors. He understood them, understood angles and light and the geometry of deception at a level that bordered on genius. But respect didn't stop bullets. Yamamoto made his decision. He could hold position and hope they hadn't actually spotted him, or he could reposition and reset the ambush. He chose repositioning, a slow, careful movement, inches at a time. Jack saw the movement in the ground mirror. Tiny, almost imperceptible. But there. "He's relocating," Jack whispered. "Southeast, about 5 degrees, he'll try to flank." "How do you want to play it?" Jack thought fast. The Japanese sniper knew he might be spotted. He'd be expecting return fire, counter-maneuvers, standard tactics, so Jack would give him something unexpected. "We're going to walk into his kill zone," Jack said. "What?" "With mirrors as decoys, full-size reflective panels that look like uniforms from a distance. We position them in a spread formation, make him think we're advancing. When he fires at the decoys, we triangulate and end this." It took 15 minutes to prepare. They used ponchos stretched over branches, with mirrors attached to catch light, and create the illusion of moving soldiers. From 80 yards away, in jungle shadows, the decoys looked convincing. "On 3, Jack counted down. "Move the decoys forward, slow and steady." The decoys advanced, 6 man-shaped reflections moving through the undergrowth. To Yamamoto, they looked like Marines advancing in tactical formation, exposed, vulnerable, perfect targets. He aimed at the center mass of the lead soldier, controlled his breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed through the jungle. The decoy jerked backward, the poncho tearing, the mirror shattering, but no blood, no scream, just fabric and glass. "Got you," Jack whispered. Yamamoto realized his mistake the instant he fired. The reflection patterns were wrong. The movement was too uniform. He'd shot at ghosts, while the real Americans... 3 rifles fired simultaneously from positions Yamamoto hadn't even considered. The bullets tore through his cover, through his carefully prepared position, through his chest and throat. He fell backward, his rifle slipping from his hands, blood mixing with the jungle earth. His last thought was that the American had outplayed him, not with better marksmanship, but with better theater. In a war of invisibility, the man who controlled what the enemy saw controlled everything. Jack approached the fallen sniper cautiously, rifle ready, but the man was already dead, eyes staring at the canopy above. He was young, maybe late 20s, with the weathered look of someone who'd been at war for years. His rifle was pristine, well-maintained, a professional's weapon. "Check his gear," Morrison ordered. They found a journal written in Japanese, a map marked with American positions, and something else, a small mirror, polished and cared for, tucked into the sniper's breast pocket. "He was learning our trick," Chen said quietly, "adapting to it. And he almost beat us," Jack admitted. "If I hadn't positioned that ground mirror, he would have." "So what now? They'll keep adapting. We'll keep adapting. Where does it end?" Jack looked at the broken mirrors scattered across the battlefield, his decoys, the Japanese snipers' experimental tools, all the shattered reflections of a war fought with light and shadow and psychological warfare. "It ends when one side runs out of soldiers to adapt," Jack said quietly, "or when someone finally wins." But winning, he was beginning to understand, wasn't about killing the most enemies. It was about breaking their will to fight. And mirrors, these stupid, ridiculous pieces of glass, had done more to break Japanese sniper confidence than any amount of firepower could have achieved. The word spread through both lines over the next week. The Americans had a mirror hunter who could see the invisible, predict the unpredictable, kill the unkillable. Japanese snipers started second-guessing their positions, their tactics, their training. Some became overly cautious. Others became reckless. Both responses were fatal. By the end of November, Jack's technique had been adopted by 12 other Marine units. Variations emerged. Some teams used polished metal instead of glass. Others developed elaborate decoy systems. The Japanese adapted too, but they were always one step behind, always reactive rather than proactive. Jack trained 40 Marines in the mirror technique before being rotated back to Australia for rest. He left Guadalcanal with 87 confirmed enemy sniper kills. Not all his own shots, but all attributed to tactics he'd developed. The stupid mirror trick had worked. It had worked so well that it changed how jungle warfare was fought in the Pacific theater. Not through firepower or technology, but through psychological warfare and the simple understanding that in combat, perception was often more powerful than reality. But Jack carried something else back with him. The memory of Corporal Yamamoto's mirror, carefully polished, tucked close to his heart, a reminder that the enemy wasn't stupid or backward. They were learning, adapting, fighting with the same desperation and intelligence as the Marines. In a war of mirrors and reflections, both sides were hunting ghosts. The only difference was which ghosts were real. Camp Pendleton, California, 1987. The old man stood before 200 Marine recruits, holding a piece of mirror glass that caught the afternoon sun. His hands shook slightly. Age, not fear. But his eyes were still sharp, still calculating angles and reflections, with the instinct of someone who'd once hunted with light as a weapon. "Most of you think sniping is about marksmanship," Jack Holloway said, his voice carrying across the training ground, "about breathing control and trigger discipline and ballistic calculations. And you're not wrong, but you're not completely right either." He held up the mirror, turning it slowly. "This piece of glass killed more enemy snipers in Guadalcanal than any rifle in my platoon. Not because it fired bullets, but because it controlled information. It made the enemy see what I wanted them to see. And in combat, controlling what the enemy sees is more powerful than any weapon." A young lieutenant raised his hand. "Sir, with modern optics and thermal imaging, wouldn't the mirror technique be obsolete?" Jack smiled. "Technology changes. Human psychology doesn't. A sniper still has to make decisions based on visual information. If you can manipulate that information, create false targets, false movements, false threats, you control the battlefield regardless of what equipment they're using." He walked along the line of recruits, seeing his younger self in their faces, eager, confident. unaware of how quickly confidence could die in actual combat. The Japanese sniper who almost killed me, Corporal Yamamoto, I learned his name later, he was brilliant. Better trained than me, more experienced, probably a better shot. But he died because he trusted his eyes too much. He believed what he saw. Jack paused, letting that sink in. The lesson isn't that mirrors are magic. The lesson is that warfare is about adaptation. The side that adapts faster, that thinks more creatively, that questions assumptions, that's the side that survives. We won Guadalcanal not because we were better soldiers, but because we were willing to try something ridiculous when conventional tactics failed. "Sir," another recruit asked, "do you regret any of the men you killed?" The question hung in the air. Jack had been asked this before, by journalists and historians and his own grandchildren. The answer never got easier. "I regret the war," he said finally. "I regret that young men on both sides died for decisions made by old men in distant capitals. But do I regret using every tactical advantage I could find to keep my Marines alive? No. War doesn't give you the luxury of fighting fair. It only gives you the choice of winning or dying." He held up the mirror again, its surface reflecting clouds and blue sky. This piece of glass represented a choice. I could follow standard doctrine and watch more of my friends die, or I could try something stupid that might save lives. I chose stupid, and it worked. Not just in Guadalcanal, he continued. The mirror technique was adapted for urban warfare in Europe, modified for night operations in Korea. Elements of it are still taught today in counter-sniper courses, because the principle remains valid. Make the enemy react to false information, and they reveal themselves. After the lecture, a young sergeant approached. "Sir, can I ask something off the record?" "Go ahead. Was it really just about saving lives, or was there something else?" Jack studied the young man, seeing genuine curiosity rather than challenge. "You mean, was it about revenge? About beating them at their own game? About proving that Americans could outsmart an enemy that specialized in stealth and patience?" "Yeah, that. Honestly, all of it. I wanted my Marines to survive. I wanted to defeat an enemy that had terrorized us for weeks. And yes, I wanted to prove that innovation could beat tradition, that a stupid idea from a sergeant could be more effective than established doctrine from generals." Jack smiled grimly. "War brings out everything in you, the noble, the practical, and the petty. The trick is making sure the noble part wins most of the time." The sergeant nodded and walked away. Jack stayed on the training ground, watching the sun set over Camp Pendleton. Somewhere in storage, the Marine Corps archives held his original after-action reports, his sketches of mirror configurations, his calculations of angles and light. Military historians occasionally called him, wanting to discuss the psychological warfare aspects of the Pacific campaign. But what stayed with Jack wasn't the tactics or the statistics or the confirmed kills. It was the memory of that first moment, standing in the jungle with a piece of cockpit glass, thinking this is either genius or suicide, and trying it anyway because men were dying and something had to change. 45 years later, that moment still defined him. Not because the mirror trick was revolutionary, but because it represented the willingness to question everything when lives were at stake. To look at a piece of broken glass and see a weapon. To take something the enemy would never expect and turn it into their worst nightmare. In the end, that's what won wars. Not superior technology or overwhelming force, but the ability to think differently when conventional thinking failed, to be stupid enough to try something ridiculous and smart enough to make it work. Jack walked toward his car, his shadow stretching long across the training ground. Behind him the sun glinted off a window, throwing a reflection that danced across the pavement. Even now, decades later, his eyes tracked the reflection automatically, calculating angles, assessing threats, seeing possibilities in light and shadow. Some instincts never died. Some lessons stayed with you forever. And some wars, the ones fought in your mind, against memory and trauma and the ghosts of men you killed, Those wars never really ended. But at least the mirror trick had saved lives. At least his stupid idea had meant something. And in the long, terrible mathematics of war, that was as close to redemption as any soldier could hope to find. The Marine Corps would keep teaching the technique. New generations would learn to hunt with reflections and psychology and creative adaptation. And somewhere in a jungle that had long since reclaimed its battlefields, the shattered mirrors still lay buried in earth, catching no light, reflecting nothing, silent witnesses to the day when stupidity became genius and glass became deadlier than steel.